see my buddy, Senator Tom Coker down there. I think Senator Cruz is there, and I think the governor's around. Is that Ruth Ann? And then former Governor Ruth Ann Miller. Most importantly, my sister-in-law, my sister Valerie. Anyway. Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million.
Okay, hello. So I'm back in my office, and today is our short class. And let me open up the lesson plan so that you can see how I'm working here. So share screen, and we'll share. Okay, so we have a debate, but a class debate today because no students signed up. So on to South Koreans, the Center for Pandemic Response Policy should be located in a country's National Security Council. Okay, so I think I pointed out, I know I pointed out on your on some of your essays that U.S. did have a pandemic response section of its National Security Council that was established in 2018 under the Obama administration. Although George W. Bush began formally motivating or pushing the United States government when he was president to begin to develop U.S. capabilities to deal with a possible pandemic. Because as was pointed out on a news program I was listening to this morning, every president, every administration in the last, 3 or 4 administrations has had to deal with the pandemic. Barack Obama, while he was president from 2008 to 2016, had to deal with the MERS virus, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome virus, the H1N1 virus, the Zika virus, remember Zika, and the Ebola outbreak, and Ebola virus outbreak in Africa. Before Barack Obama, George W. Bush had to deal with the SARS virus outbreak. So there will be more outbreaks. There will be more epidemics. There will be another one, and it will be a matter of soon, not later, because we've already seen it happen 4 times at least under Barack Obama while he was president. So, and there are a lot of interesting factors causing those pandemics, including globalization and industrialization, that news reports coming out now indicate that, of course, as human beings are pressing further and further against natural resources and natural nature reserves where animal species typically live without being disturbed, but now humans are coming more and more into contact with them. There's more and more zoonotic disease transmission of viruses existing in animals transitioning from animals to humans. And that will become more and more typical because the world population is continuing to increase. It will probably reach 10 billion this century. Climate change is accelerating due to human-caused factors, which is going to put more stress on societies to exploit more resources. So there's going to be more of these epidemics, and of course they can be much worse potentially than this coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 virus epidemic. Can you imagine something as contagious as the current coronavirus, while also as deadly or lethal as the Ebola virus? Combining those two, the Ebola lethality that was very deadly, that killed at least half of the people that were infected with it, with the contagiousness of the coronavirus today, it could well happen. It could well happen. So that's the context for our discussion here about national security and defense policy. as I'm thinking about how to address this issue in this short class in a way that's most interesting and useful for you, I want to highlight an important point made in international relations studies regarding how we see that, in fact, foreign policymakers are typically looking for historical analogies to understand the current foreign policy challenges and problems they face today. Remember, there's an expression we have in English about how the generals are always preparing to fight the last war. Oh, okay. I hear some noise in the background. Yes, you want me to do the attendance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Let me do the attendance. Okay, so we go to get this bar out of the way here. You know, we get this get the Zoom bar. It pops up and gets everything. So American foreign policy, we go to attendance, stop share, and maybe share here, and we go to Zoom here, and we go down to week 12, and we go add smart attendance, and it is 237. 237 is your lucky number today. 237 is your lucky number today for smart attendance. Okay, so back to what I was saying earlier, that policymakers, foreign policymakers, when they are considering how to address a problem, typically what they do is they, and I don't see the screen I was looking for. I'm looking for the screen I had open. So let me just go open it again. So we go here, and just a second until I get the analogy. I want to just click on that. Okay, let me see if I can find it here. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want that. I think I want that. Yes, share. So analogy. Foreign policy decision makers, when they are looking to I don't want that one. Oh, I know where it's going to this place. Okay, stop share, share screen. Foreign policy decision makers, they typically are looking for analogies. And like we talk about American or any kind of military general, we have this saying that generals typically are preparing to fight the last war, right? So, and they make mistakes. When they confront current military conflicts, they assume like the present military conflict in which they're in, the war they're fighting, is like the last war they fought. Failing to account adequately for changing technology, changing levels of mobilization, and changing values and motivations of the actors that are involved in a military conflict. So they fail because they work with their experience from the most recent war they fought. They develop their plans and strategies to fight that last war that they fought to the current war, and it doesn't work because the world has changed in terms of technology, in terms of values and motivations of the people fighting the wars, and in terms of capabilities. Okay, and that's true in foreign policy as well. But typically, when foreign policy decision makers in general confront current crises or current problems, they are interpreting the current problem they are facing in terms of a historical analogy, right? And that might be useful, or that might be a problem. They look for historical events in the past and say, well, in the past, we did that and it worked, whatever we did, so we'll do that again today. And they think it worked. And of course, you know where I'm going with this, that so much of current thinking about how to deal with, for example, with North Korea and Kim Jong-un's North Korea's nuclear program is based upon the historical analogies of rightly or wrongly understood regarding what happened during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The Cold War, again, the Cold War, the Cold War, the Cold War keeps coming back. And in particular, that institutionalization of the enemy stereotype that Henry Kissinger in his 1957 book, Nuclear Weapons and Foreign Policy, expressed and articulated, has become institutionalized in terms of trying to understand how to deal with North Korea or China or other actors on the basis of that assumption that the United States successfully contained the Soviet Union that was trying to expand, the Soviet Union was trying to expand and dominate the earth, that the Soviet Union was in effect the Russian version of Nazi Germany. In other words, you don't need to look inside the black box. The black box is not that critically important. You need to focus on deterrence. You need to focus on making sure you don't appease an enemy, because if you appease an enemy, you make that enemy more aggressive. The way Hitler's Germany was more aggressive as a result of appeasement towards Germany by the British, in particular, in 1939, late 1930s. And so you look for historical analogies that may or may not be wise. And that's a danger today in terms of dealing with North Korea or China or Russia or any country. Analogy. So what's the proof? Let me show you some proof, right? Let me get this out of the way here. All right. So, for example, here you see, and I'm gonna have to screen share again. I think that's it. Here, this is from last month, leading up to the election a few weeks ago, right? This is from New York Times Online. Joe Biden Jr. shot down President Trump's boast that he had diffused a dangerous situation in the Korean Peninsula by cultivating a good relationship with Kim Jong-un, likening Mr. Trump's actions to the appeasement of Adolf Hitler before World War II. Remember, we talked about this in class, right? What were the assumptions of appeasement? The assumption of appeasement was that Hitler's Germany was belligerent, not because it saw opportunity. Hitler's Germany was belligerent because it thought it was humiliated. And this was the assumption behind appeasement, that why was Germany being so obnoxious and belligerent by its leadership, that it was motivated by humiliation, that Germany felt humiliated by its unequal treatment, unfair treatment by the victors of World War I. And that it was motivated by national dignity and desire to unify all Germans in one state that were supposedly being oppressed by those bad Czechs in Czechoslovakia and by those bad Poles in Poland, and a desire to be independent, to be able to have its own military, its own army, its own navy, its own air force. But in effect, in reality, Germany was belligerent because it saw a wonderful opportunity, because the rest of the world was so degenerate in Hitler's misperception of the West being degenerate. And so it was really motivated by personal power and national grandeur as its primary motivation. And so it saw a stereotyped the West in this way to justify that foreign policy motivation, right? So if Joe Biden says Donald Trump was appeasing North Korea, he's implying that Kim Jong-un is motivated in this way, that Kim Jong-un's nuclear program, that Kim Jong-un's belligerency, that Kim Jong-un's threatening war and violence is motivated by perceived degeneracy in Seoul and Washington. That Seoul and Washington do not have the will and determination to resist him because we are degenerate compared to North Korea's political system. And so you don't appease that actor. Now, if you appease it, you like what happened in late 1930s Europe, you make it more aggressive, because appeasement of an actor perceiving this confirms that those targets of the belligerency were sissies. They lack the will to resist. They're degenerate. They're pushovers. And if you appease an actor that sees degeneracy, you make it more aggressive. Because by accommodating Hitler's demands, letting him take the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, letting him unify with Austria, letting him do what he wanted to do up until that point, seemed to confirm in the rest of the German leadership that Hitler's worldview maybe was right. Or at least he looks to be so right that the German people love him. And he becomes stronger by appeasing Hitler. So now, does Joe Biden really think that Kim Jong-un sees a wonderful opportunity? That Kim Jong-un this makes it even more complicated. That Kim Jong-un is motivated by opportunity, that Kim Jong-un perceives degeneracy in Seoul and Washington? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. But I do know that Joe Biden knows what to say in order to win elections. Joe Biden knows what to do, what to say if he wants to get elected president. Joe Biden knows what he has to do and what he has to say to get the other American elites to support him or compete for influence with those elites against Donald Trump. And that means he's got to talk about, we never appease an aggressive power. We don't appease Adolf Hitler. And just like we did not appease the Soviet Union, we didn't make that mistake again. That's the implied context here, right? So he goes on, the moderator of Thursday's debate, Kristen Walker, asked Mr. Biden, referring to North Korean leader, are there any conditions under which you would meet with him? Because Donald Trump met with him twice, Kim Jong-un, right? On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula to be a nuclear-free zone, Mr. Biden responded. He didn't like Obama, Mr. Trump shot back. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it. I know for a fact they tried, he wouldn't do it. And that's okay. You know what, North Korea? We're not in a war. We have a good relationship. People don't understand having a good relationship with leaders of other countries is a good thing. Mr. Biden pounced. We had a great relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe. The rest of Europe, he said. Ooh. So, again, I mean, this really indicates more indirectly the continuing influence of the Cold War, that we made a horrible mistake in appeasing Hitler, unintentional, but a horrible mistake, making World War II more likely, and we did not make that mistake in dealing with the Soviet Union. And that's how we won the Cold War. And now Donald Trump is making the same mistake that Chamberlain and Britain and Western Europe made in dealing with Hitler. Donald Trump is risking to make with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So that's the entire text and subtext of this news report. Again, the perceived or misunderstanding of what happened in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, leading to the end of the Cold War, is the dominant framework for talking in Washington in terms of U.S. national security and defense policy about what we are doing today in 2020. Still to this day, even though the Cold War has been over for almost 30 years. Why? I think one part of any explanation as to why, answering why, has to do with all those vast vested interests that built up during the Cold War and that are continuing to exist and continue to wield political authority and influence. Now, and what are those vested interests? Here's a news report about how now that Joe Biden is getting ready to become president of the United States, all of the different lobby groups are becoming active in attempting, and external actors, foreign actors, are attempting to become active to lobby the incoming Biden administration. So this report is just from a couple days ago, highlighting how the governments of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey are hiring professional lobbyists, a Democratic Party lobbyist with ties to the Democratic Party's congressional leaders, so that they can lobby Donald Trump's administration and the Congress in general. Heather Podesta, a leading Democratic lobbyist, said her firm recently signed a slew of new clients from the energy, consumer goods, technology, and defense industries that were preparing for the expected Biden win. Lobbyists and other advisors who help clients navigate Washington are quietly highlighting ties to Mr. Biden and his team in pitches to prospective clients, while firms and interest groups that lack such ties are scrambling to secure them. And of course, if Donald Trump's administration, Joe Biden's administration helps those lobbyists or responds positively to those interest groups, he and his Democratic Party colleagues will expect political help in return for the next elections, which will happen in 2 years, in less than 2 years, in 2020, in 23 months for the Congress. And then the next presidential elections in 2024. It's not that far away. And so Joe Biden is not going to attack all of these vested interests that built up over the last 70 years in Washington during the Cold War and afterwards, around all of those interests that have emerged around the Cold War policies and afterwards, who want to protect their interests and promote their interests that emerged over that 70 years. Joe Biden doesn't want to make more enemies against those people, so he will, and his supporters will probably accommodate them. And after all, those interests are good. They saved the world from the Russian version of Nazi Germany, supposedly. So this is indicating or showing you the internal black box dynamics of how these vested interests and the status quo are politically so powerful because of this symbiotic relationship that Biden's and the Democratic Party may respond positively to these lobbyists, but they will expect something in return, which is political support, political campaign donations. For example, a lot of donations, huge amounts of money are spent on political campaigns now in the United States. Donald Trump, it goes on here, it is a far cry from 4 years ago when Mr. Trump swept into town, Washington, with few connections to established gatekeepers and lobbyists. Those are the established gatekeepers. These people all emerged over the last 70 years. Instead of filling Donald Trump's campaign promise to drain the swamp of special interests, Mr. Trump empowered a powerful but relatively small new class of lobbyists with connections to him or his inner circle. Remember, I think he's trying to build a new political dynasty. He's making a new faction in the Republican Party, but they're not going to. He didn't radically transform these vested interests. They reaped tens of millions of dollars in lobbying fees from companies, interest groups, and foreign governments seeking to navigate an administration that revolved around the whims of one man while defying established norms about policymaking and governance. Those established norms about policymaking and governance, those emerged during the Cold War. But as I said, Donald Trump has not reduced the defense budget. Donald Trump has not started a new war, but he did kill the second most powerful figure in Iran. They seem to be instigating or trying to promote or push the Iranians to provoke a war with the United States. So the pending change in administrations has disrupted a profitable business for K Street Trump whispers, because K Street is the main street in Washington, D.C., K Street, where the lobbyist companies and businesses are headquartered. So like we say K Street for lobbyists, we say Wall Street for businesses in the US, we say K Street for lobbyists. K Street's Trump whispers, with one, David Urban, leaving a lobbying firm in September that he had built into a powerhouse, and others eyeing partnerships or mergers with Democratic or partisan firms. So in other words, Biden's back in, so we're going to now work with that administration. But again, the implication here is there's not going to be a radical challenge to all of these vast vested interests, just as there was not under Trump, and there won't be under Biden. And there may not be until there's a hegemonic war. I know some of you talk about that in your international relations class, hegemonic war, right? Some huge catastrophe, disaster. But keep in mind, if we have a hegemonic war, there will no longer be a human race. There will no longer be human civilization because there'll be a nuclear war. So if we have a hegemonic war, there will be no more human civilization. And keep in mind, by the way, I'm giving you my perspective. The dominant prevailing view in the United States is that the United States did save the world from a Russian version of Nazi Germany. That these institutions, these vast prevailing interests, these lobby or institutionalized networks, these norms about policymaking and governance, these are good. These are good. These saved the world from totalitarianism. They've got their problems. Human beings make mistakes. We all know that, but we don't throw out NATO. We don't throw out United States hegemony. We try to mold it. We try to modify it. We try to correct it. We try to improve it. We don't throw it away. No. So in some ways, the shift is a return to normal for the influence industry in which the most successful firms were those with deep policy expertise and connections. Again, deep policy expertise. Expertise in what? The status quo, Cold War institutions, containment and its aftermath, the Washington Consensus, American hegemony. That's the deep policy expertise. On both sides of the aisle, that means both Republican and Democrats in the Congress, a number of firms have been recruiting lobbyists with Biden connections. So I just wanted to highlight that you can see how this process works. A couple of days ago, after the presidential race was called for Mr. Biden, the Egyptian government set the stage to do just that, entering into a $65,000 per month contract with a bipartisan Democrat-Republican team from Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck, one of those K Street firms. The team will be led by Nadeem El-Shami, a Democrat who was chief of staff to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Ed Royce, a Republican who was a California congressman. Republicans and Democrats. Another lobbyist, Mr. Strick, worked with Rational 360, another K Street company, to help organize at least 3 teleconference briefings for Mr. Lockhart and Rational 360 with foreign officials. Mr. Lockhart's a Democratic lobbyist. The briefing on the morning after the election drew representatives of 22 governments from Austria to Uganda. So one open question is how far Mr. Biden will go to follow through on a proposal he made in October 2019, that's 14 months ago, to prohibit foreign governments from hiring outside lobbyists. In other words, foreign governments like Uganda, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, South Korea, to hire lobbyists in the United States to lobby the US Congress and US administration for their interests. If a foreign government wants to share its views with the United States or to channel its decision-making, it should do so through regular diplomatic channels, in other words, through the embassies and so on, Mr. Biden said in a statement. He could prohibit his appointees, the people that will work in his government, from meeting with lobbyists hired by foreign governments, but it would require an act by Congress, which is extremely unlikely, to actually ban foreign governments from hiring lobbying firms, K Street lobbying firms. So my question to you is, how likely is US President-elect Joe Biden going to I should say, prohibit his appointees that will be in his administration from meeting with lobbyists hired by foreign governments? So that's my question to you. And let's see if I can stop share and go to the poll and polling and go to poll. So launch poll. How likely is US President-elect Joe Biden going to prohibit his appointees from meeting with lobbyists hired by foreign governments? You have 1 minute. He said that in October last year, 2019. Two more. One more. One more vote. One more, 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Okay, end poll, share results. So 3 of you think it's likely, 3 of you, you don't know, 4 unlikely. I would have to go with the unlikely. I mean, I think it's going to be awfully unusual for an administration to ban foreign officials, foreign governments, appointees in his own administration from meeting with with lobbyists hired by foreign governments. I mean, but we'll see. It's never been done before. It's never been done before. So we'll see. All right. So let me open up another file here. And so again, this notion of analogies from the past. Deterrence here. Okay, here's another example. Let's see if I can screen share. Stop sharing. I got to stop sharing. Okay, so close that. Yeah, here's another example of the analogies and the concepts and thinking that developed during the Cold War, again, being applied by US military and political leaders to dealing with North Korea. So this is from a year ago. He notes, it's interesting that Kim Jong-un said they're not interested in appeasement. But I just wanted to highlight this statement. Miley, who's the chief military officer, the top military officer in the United States, he's chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, reiterated the continued commitment to providing extended deterrence against North Korea. So in other words, that North Korea has to be deterred through its, in other words, the assumption in that diabolical enemy stereotype that we talked about earlier, right? About how the target of your deterrence is highly rational, that he or she makes a cost-benefit analysis about whether or not to use military deadly force against you. And you have to show your adversary, the target of your policy, that that he will bear unacceptable costs as a result of using or threatening military force against you, against me, because in other words, he's highly rational. You can deter him through his highly rational calculation of cost, benefit, risk analysis to determine what to do. Again, the institutionalization of this enemy stereotype continues in dealing with North Korea, in dealing with Iran, right? That these actors are aggressive and they need to be deterred. And you must not appease them. Because if you appease this actor, of course, naturally thinks, if I see an enemy, my fear is that the enemy sees me as degenerate, and I must show the evil empire, the diabolical enemy, I am not degenerate. I have the will to fight. I'll die, I'll kill, I'll fight. My soldiers. You cannot confirm the degenerate stereotype that the evil empire has of you. It's just continues to be propagate itself 30 years after the Cold War is over, through these vast vested interests in the military and economics and in bureaucracies that built up and that continue, and that are around which so much economic interests have grown and developed, around those security institutions and arrangements and alliances, that it's just self-perpetuating. And if you're a realist, a structural realist, well, that's great. Finally, we're overcoming the security dilemma thanks to American benign hegemony. American hegemony, you know, it's dominant, but it's better than Nazi German hegemony, better than Soviet communist hegemony, and certainly better than Chinese Communist Party hegemony that it's trying to expand into Asia and the rest of the world. You got to pick your hegemon, South Korea. You got to pick your hegemon. You want a Chinese Communist Party hegemony or American hegemony? But you can't, you're going to have to submit to somebody's hegemony. Okay, so, what else? I'll see if I can find something else to show you here. But keep in mind, you know, that we make fun of these Well, let me show you a video on appeasement before we go to our debate, and see if I can find it here without wasting too much time. And okay, so I thought I had it here, ready to go. Oh, maybe I don't have it here. Oh. Put it someplace else. I put these things in the wrong in the wrong file. Maybe I put it here. Well, I don't want to get distracted with it, trying to look for this thing now. Evidently I did. Let's see if I can find it here.
In return for Hitler's guarantee of world peace, Chamberlain and Delage prevailed upon Czechoslovakia to give up the Sudetenland without a fight. In Britain, a happy Chamberlain came back declaring he had achieved peace. Peace in our time. One of the most tragic and ironic scenes in all history.
This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
Chamberlain believed that they could do a deal with Hitler, that Britain and Germany had a special affinity.
We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
Winston Churchill had warned his country and his government that they were pursuing a disastrous course with regard to appeasing Germany.
Okay, just to give Neville Chamberlain some benefit of, he wasn't a complete fool. That if I can find it here, and I gotta go here, go back to the right file. Okay, here. I mean, I think the problem with Neville Chamberlain, was they could not. Like I said, they were preparing to deal with the last conflict, World War I. Germany was belligerent. They thought Germany's being belligerent there were similar reasons as to why Germany was belligerent prior to 1914, that it was humiliated, that it was motivated by national dignity and perceived humiliation and insult and restrictions on Germany, that were the primary reasons for its belligerency. We'd never seen in the modern world anything like Hitler's Germany before. Maybe Napoleonic France was like that to some extent, but that was a long time ago, 150 years earlier. Chamberlain just could not understand. I mean, we'd never seen an act like this. The League of Nations was based upon the assumptions that led to World War I. Dealing with something like Germany and Japan was unprecedented. That he wants to fight a war, that Germany under Hitler actually wants to fight World War again. Who could believe that? And that's that point made in this article from 12 years ago about how appeasement was considered to be practical, good policy in London at the time. That we're going to have to make a compromise. We have to compromise and negotiate with Hitler, and we have to act like good, proud statesmen. And so it's difficult, but we have to do this, and we can do it. But of course, today, Neville Chamberlain, everyone laughs at Neville Chamberlain, mocks him. What a fool, what an idiot. And we didn't make that mistake after World War II. Ha, 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 ha. And we won the Cold War. Okay, but we're running out of time here. And so let's go to our debate topic. And the debate topic is, not that one. And see if I can find it here. Okay, so To South Koreans, the Center for Pandemic Policy Response should be located in a country's National Security Council. And so let me assign you into groups, and to groups of 4, breakout rooms, groups of 4, and go. And so Sungun you are chair of group 1. Yarno, you're in charge of group 2. Ho-Young Park, you're in charge of group 3. And Lee Sang-moon, you're in charge of group 4. And heads, group 1 and 2 are pro. Tails, group 1 and 2 are con. Ready? And it is heads. So group 1 and 2 is pro. Group 3 and 4 is con. 1 and 2 is pro. 3 and 4 is con. And again, the topic is this. 1 and 2 is pro. 3 and 4 is con. Okay? And the leaders of those groups prepare to tell us what your group's argument is. Go! Oh, I have to open all rooms. Okay. Rooms are open. You got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
One moment.
Yarno.
Yes, sir. We already wrote it down in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already written down. So
Okay.
National Security Council, is that the name?
네, 이미 설립돼 있기 때문에
Okay, so heads, it's 1 or 2, tails, it's 3 or 4, and it's heads. Heads, it's 1, group 1, or tails, it's group 2, and it's group 1. So Sungun, you're pro. What did your group have to what did your group have to say for pro?
So we said that this corona pandemic situation should be handled by NSC because Trump once mentioned that the like handling of like pandemic situations from like different groups is like waste of resources and like and time and money. So it would be time saving and like could save more budgets and money and resources and people if this pandemic situation is handled by NSC. So
Okay.
I would say that's one of the reasons.
Okay, and groups 3 or 4 for Khan. Heads is 3, and it's tails, group 4. So Yi Sang Mun, what did your group come up with for Khan?
Yeah, we will talk about the function of the NSC and think about who the members of the NSC are. They're the president and vice president and the secretary of state and the secretary of defense as statutory members and the director of the national intelligence and the chair. So they are not personal specialized in disease management or control in the pandemic. So we were decided that it is not suitable that they are control the
Okay.
center for the pandemic response policy.
Okay, Yarno for pro, last for group 2.
Yeah, we mostly talked about that decision making for these kind of response policies is centralized when you keep it in the Security Council, and it also can be used as a means of political gains for current leaders of the US, as we've seen before that multiple presidents have used so-called national security as a way to justify actions without like consulting the council.
Okay. Group 4, group 3 for Khan, Ho-Young Park.
So we talk about there are not enough medical experts on the National Security Council. So if we agree there, we need the central institution to respond this problem, but maybe it have to be another branch, something with medical expert, and also no matter how center tried hard to solve this problem, fake news still exists, and only someone who willing to listen only will hear what government say. So
Okay.
that's it.
All right, and so now let's vote. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's vote on who won the debate, or who do you support? Pro or con or neutral cannot decide. Go! Two more. Two more votes, 30 seconds left. One more vote left. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Done. Share results. And there you see, you're half and half divided, and one or neutral cannot decide. Okay, that's it for today. So that's it. Bye.
You.